Hello and welcome to Alien Places, the show where I ask guests which three places they would show an alien visitor to give it a sense of the key issues facing human society. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Megan McCubbin, a zoologist and campaigner, wildlife TV presenter. She's passionate about the wildlife trade, in particular the illegal wildlife trade. She is the co-founder of Wildlife Rebellion and currently broadcasting daily through the Self-Isolating Bird Club. So welcome, Megan.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on. I can't wait to talk about all the places my alien's going to go.
Yeah, great. So you've thought of your three alien places. But before we start, can you tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do? I know that you went to university and did a zoology degree.
I did. So I've been passionate about wildlife and the environment for as long as I can remember, from as long as I could, walk on the ground, crawl on the ground. I was just infatuated with the world around me. So for me, it was just a natural progression to want to study it even more in a bigger depth. So I went to the University of Liverpool. I did. I actually, at the beginning, I wanted to be an actress, to be totally honest, and so I didn't choose the right GCSEs. So I went and then did a foundation year in biological science that enabled me to then go on to do my zoology degree. So I was at the University of Liverpool for 5 years studying. I did primarily there, I looked at kind of behaviour, I looked at marine biology and lots of different fields and found what I was really interested in. For me, predators have always been really high up there. I've loved how their stealth, their strength, how they move and interact with their environment, how they shape the populations below them and keep control of an environment. I find them absolutely fascinating. So I've been really lucky to have a relationship with the Wild Heart Trust on the Isle of Wight, which rescue ex-circus tigers and lions and animals from the pet trade as well. So I've been lucky to help rehabilitate them, and it's just kind of grown from there, really.
Yeah, great. And you've also done some TV presenting. So can you give us a few examples of things that you've presented in recent years?
Sure. So I came out of my degree and like anyone is kind of unsure of exactly what they want to do, but I got the opportunity to film for a BBC Three documentary called Undercover Tourist. And this was looking at how tourists could easily come across issues that are facing wildlife with the illegal wildlife trade. How easily accessible are these issues to people who are just traveling to these countries? And I had previously done some work with Animals Asia, an amazing organization that rescue bears from the illegal bear bile trade. So I suggested, why don't we do an episode on bear bile? So I went to Vietnam and we were only there for about a week, 10 days or so, and we filmed this episode for BBC Three, which just explored the issues and how we can kind of encourage bear bile farming to come to an end. And it was really good. And since that point, I've been doing with various other projects. I've presented for Earthrise on Al Jazeera, looking at the impact of chewing gum as a plastic pollutant. Also looking at social movements like Extinction Rebellion, how effective are they? Are they the way forward? Since that point, I've become a big fan of Extinction Rebellion. I've been involved with them since almost the very start and getting involved in all their actions, and have since created Wildlife Rebellion, which is kind of a family-friendly rebellion, which is all positive, nothing illegal, everything will be authorised to highlight the loss of biodiversity.
Yeah, and of course, your stepdad is the one and only Chris Packham, and I understand that as you were growing up, you were behind the scenes travelling the world with Chris as he was doing his broadcasts.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that is probably where everything started. I met him when I was 2 years old. He used to put jam on my nose to encourage butterflies and wasps and whatever else to come and land on my nose to lick things off it. So yeah, I had a very up close and personal relationship with lots of animals. My bedroom was honestly, it was very different from what you'd imagine a young girl's bedroom to be like. I had warthog skulls, cockroaches, tortoises, the fluffy things as well, rabbits and gerbils, but praying mantis and porcupine quills and everything everywhere. So
I've noticed that Chris talks a lot about animal poo. How old were you when he first introduced you to fresh animal poo?
Oh goodness, like as young as I can remember, he would always kind of smell this, have a look in this, what is this feeling? So I learned to identify animals pretty quickly based on their poos. and you do get a lot of useful, valuable information from it. So I've come to I don't maybe love poo as much as he does. I don't get quite the same excitement from it, but I see the value in it.
Yes. There's genuine scientific value in animal poo, isn't there? I mean, it's a way of monitoring which species are in certain areas. So nothing wrong with poo. That's it's all good.
All good.
Yeah. So from poo to aliens. So you've thought about your 3 places that you would show an alien visitor to give it a sense of the key issues facing human society. So let's go straight into the first place. So where's the first place that you would show an alien visitor?
Well, this is one that I really struggled with because, I wanted to show it the very best of biodiversity, the very best of the beauty of our planet. And there is so much beauty within it. Do you take it to Antarctica to see the penguins and the whales? Do you take it to a rainforest to see, I don't know, like the dart frogs or the amazing birds of paradise? Where would you take an alien to showcase everything? And I thought, well, there is only one place, well, a couple places on Earth, depending on where you're located, where actually there is a showcase of all of this life and all of this diversity under one roof. And that is, of course, the Natural History Museum, which is where I pretty much spent most of my time as a child in awe of Dippy the Diplodocus and all the other amazing, skeletons and fossils and things. So yeah, it's everything there under one roof. So that's where I take my alien.
Great. Okay. So you've got a few hours at the Natural History Museum with an alien visitor. Which sections would you take it to? Which particular things would you point out? Have you got any particular exhibits in mind within the Natural History Museum?
Well, I'd like to show how Earth evolved, how life evolved on Earth, so that it could get an understanding of who we are, and how things work. Because I imagine an alien coming down is going to be quite confused with all these different life forms and how they function. So it really gives a good understanding of the wonder that we have on this planet. Maybe I'd go, I don't know, I would say deep sea, but that's unusual for us, but for an alien, everything's going to be unusual. So I'd maybe start off in the early years and start off with the dinosaurs and work our way forward and showcase, the science and our capabilities in that way. So to start with Dippy and his old friends and and go forward and talk about, the functions of our Earth and how it all comes together to produce such amazing life.
Yeah, and it might be interesting for the alien to hear about our evolutionary path here on Earth, because the evolutionary paths and directions of the aliens' planet may have been very different to our own. So it'd be interesting to hear from the alien what are the similarities, what are the differences.
Exactly. You could learn a lot from an alien. And I think we could, by sharing the science that we have in our Natural History Museum, and potentially the alien can input some wisdom of their own planet or universe, wherever they happen to be from, then we can, come up with some amazing ideas and theories and help one another to discover more, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I do know from having taken the alien around the world 10 places myself recently, I know that it's bound by the legal frameworks of the Interplanetary Ethical Council. So there's only so much it can reveal about its own planet. But I'm sure it can accidentally drop a few nuggets of wisdom to pass on to our species.
Yeah, a few hints would be quite nice.
Yeah, it's hard to get out of the alien. That's what I'm saying. You got to work hard to get this information out of our alien.
Work your charm, say.
Yeah. So new to the podcast from 2020 is the option to play the alien a song, show the alien a film in each of your 3 places. So I know that you've thought about this. So what would be the song that you would play the alien at the Natural History Museum?
This one was a no-brainer, really. It was my favourite song growing up. It is iconic in so many ways, and that is, of course, Disney's 1994 animation film The Lion King with the song Circle of Life. Is there anything better?
Oh, brilliant. Circle of Life, excellent. So from The Lion King, so with all the animals on the African plains, brilliant. Yeah,
exactly. Talking about how everything's interconnected and we're all kind of one environment together, and you take one out and the whole system collapses, and it's all about how interconnected we are and how important those connections are between us. So it's a beautiful song.
Well, the aliens sat right here with me, and it's heartened to hear that that you're playing at that song and you're aware of those connections. So that's great. And what about a film that you would show the alien in the Natural History Museum? Maybe you could find a corner, an empty room, and sit down with a tablet or a laptop and play the alien a film. Which film would you show the alien?
This one's a little bit more serious. So this is a documentary that came out in 2015. It's something called Racing Extinction. It's something that when I first watched, it was, it's difficult to see in a way, because it's highlighting how us as humans are having an impact on biodiversity, but it's so beautifully filmed, and it's an Oscar-winning film as well. It's just, it really highlights the struggles that our wildlife is experiencing, but it also, it is incredibly beautiful the way it's filmed, the stories from all over the planet, but it also gives a little bit of hope as well about how we can change our ways. So that's what I'd show the Alien, Racing Extinction.
Yeah, that's great. And well, when I was talking with the Alien towards the end of our world tour, when we went around 10 places, it eventually revealed to me that one of the reasons it was visiting our planet was because it considered humans to be at risk of extinction, and it considered itself a conservation volunteer. So not only is a lot of wildlife on Earth endangered, but from an alien's perspective, humans are also endangered and at risk of extinction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from our own actions, we are certainly putting ourselves, at major risk. And it's something, that we should be thinking more about and be more concerned about. So from an alien's point of view, yeah, I mean, thank you for coming and volunteering to help us and show us the way. We need a bit of help sometimes, clearly.
Yep. So it's a interplanetary conservation volunteer.
Love that. Can I volunteer? I'd like to volunteer that on another planet. That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, that's it's doing like one of those sort of conservation holidays. When you sort of pay the organisation, maybe you have to pay a few £100s to go with an organisation to do some conservation volunteering overseas. That's basically what the Alien's doing right here on Earth. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Alien.
So what about your second place then? What's the second place that you would show an alien visitor?
Well, I really wanted to show the very best and the very worst of humanity, because humanity is what is kind of causing this environmental collapse, the loss of biodiversity. So I really wanted to show how we treat one another, because I think that's really fundamental in the understanding of how our life works. And I think one of the saddest things that humans are doing to one another, of course, is part of this refugee crisis. We know that 65.6 million people as of 2017 have been forcibly displaced worldwide because of either persecution, conflict, violence, human rights violations, climate crisis, and various other things. So we've got these high concentrations of people that are having to move from their homes. They don't necessarily want to. It's something that they are being forced to do. And we are kind of closing our borders and making it incredibly difficult for these people to start a new life. And I think that kind of showcases the very worst of humanity, that we're able to turn a blind eye to these types of things, and not care for one another. Because if we can't care for one another, then how are we supposed to care for our environment and the way that we treat our planet? So that is something that's really, really difficult. And that is, I'd say for me, one of the worst parts of humanity.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that for an alien, perhaps, because the alien may be picking up from what you've just said, that it's not just that humans are treating other species badly, but also humans are treating its own species in strange and awful ways. And that might be quite confusing and worrying for an alien. And I think the alien's done some research before coming here, and I think that's probably one of the examples that is concerning for another species looking in at our planet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bewildering thing, the way that we treat one another, and if we can learn to treat one another better, then that will be replicated throughout the way that we treat our environment. All of these things have a major implication on our environment. This mass movement of humans, it goes to show that we are having to mass move because of the climate crisis, because we are pumping so much CO2 into that area, or we're fighting with one another over, I don't know, resources and things like this. So, it goes to show how valuable these resources are to us, but also the fact that we really need to be thinking critically about the way that we're pumping carbon into our environment, and move towards a more renewable, sustainable way of using energy.
The alien is, I communicate with the alien telepathically, and it's asking me your views on population and human overpopulation as well, because a lot of people think that the overpopulation of our species is underpinning a lot of our environmental problems. And this is perhaps an example where it's also directly underpinning some of our refugee issues as well.
Absolutely. So we are overly populated. We know that there are a lot of us, but the main thing to take into consideration here is not so much the number of us, but it's the way that we consume these resources. So for us, for you know, the people, us in the UK, the USA, areas which are kind of more affluent, we are consuming at such a rate that I think it's about 2.5 Earths we'd need to manage our habits. You know, and for us in the UK and the US, we are having significantly less children than those in developing countries such as Africa and India. They have a lot more children, but they are consuming less. So it's, you know, the most damaging thing is this consumption. We need to really kind of think about that. But the most important
I'm glad you mentioned the multiple Earths, by the way, because that's why I've actually got 2 globes here. So I've got 2 globes in my flat here to make that point about kind of we actually consuming the resources not just of one planet but of 2 planets, and that's just a simple visual representation for those that's well, this is obviously a podcast, but I'm sure you can imagine that you know the image of 2 planets that we're actually consuming worth of resources. Yeah.
We only have one planet. We're a finite planet. There's not anything more that we can take. So we've got to really kind of look at our consumption. But also education is key when you're talking about overpopulation. We know that particularly the education of women reduces birth rate. So we need to kind of pump up education in all these kind of areas and provide better opportunities for people.
That's right, because a lot of people sort of worry when we talk about human overpopulation that, oh, how do we reduce it without inhumane methods? But actually, like you say, the simple availability of education throughout the world across all different types of people, particularly women, actually means that when females are fully educated in less developed countries, they generally choose to not have huge families. And so it's a perfectly humane way of reducing the human population in the long term.
Absolutely. We know that restrictions on birth rate doesn't work. We know that, you know, the China's one policy didn't work. The mutations in India didn't work. It was a very brutal, difficult thing. So yeah, I mean, education is key. We've seen a significant trend that when, you know, young women are educated, they're more career focused and therefore less focused on having larger families. So yeah, education is the way forward, as well as consuming less.
Yeah, absolutely. So which song would you play the alien at the refugee camp in Calais?
It's a song which actually came to my mind straight away when I had the idea of taking the alien here. It's a song by Flora Cash called For Someone. It's a very sweet song. It's very endearing, and it's about kind of waiting for someone to come back. And it just, I don't know, it kind of hit home for me. It's a lovely, beautiful song in a very kind of a sad way in this instance, but yeah.
Okay, so it sort of represents the issues that we've been talking about. And what about the film that you would show the alien in this, your second of the 3 alien places?
I would show the alien, again, it's another documentary. It was produced in 2017 by a German documentary film producer called A Wee Wee, I hope I pronounced that right. It's called Human Flow, and it really covers the kind of the topics of the global refugee crisis. I think it's filmed over 20 countries. They had multiple film crews all over the place, but visually it's stunning the way that they filmed it. But it really kind of hits home about the personal impact that this human migration is having. It takes note of these stories as people kind of are moving through these countries, and it's shot really simply on kind of iPhones and cameras and things. And it's it's really, really well done. It's an important watch.
Excellent. Okay, so what about the third place? What's the third place that you would show an alien visitor?
Well, I wanted to kind of counteract the kind of refugee crisis and bring it somewhere, really positive, and somewhere for me that is really positive. I mean, they say there's no place like home. So I would bring the alien to my family home with my family, so it gets a feel of how we actually can love one another. I mean, for me and my family, we're very kind of environmentally active, so we go out into the garden and do what we can to make it environmentally friendly. So we try and promote as much biodiversity as possible, planting wild flowers. We feed the birds sunflower hearts, all these kind of things to encourage wildlife into our garden. And it shows just how beautiful human relationships can be, but it also shows that kind of willingness to connect with our natural world as well, and that desire to. So that's where I'd take it home.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so it's nice to have a kind of a different scale of human interactions that you're referring to across the 3 places. So you've talked about the sort of wildlife side of things at the Natural History Museum, and the sort of international issue of refugees, and then also the sort of small family unit. And what sort of things would you do with the alien in your family home? Would you play some board games with the alien? What other things would you kind of get the alien involved with? A bit of cooking, maybe? I know that's a bit of an issue for your current residents, with certain Mr. Chris Packham giving you pot noodles this morning, I think.
Yeah, he's not the best cook. He's not the best cook. Maybe the alien could, you know, if he's willing to share some wisdom on his cooking from his planet, it would be great. That's a good question. I mean, I could try and teach the alien to play Monopoly. But I don't know. Do you know? I'd probably we're really lucky where we are that we've got kind of woodland next door. So I take the alien for a walk in the woods. Take my 2 poodles, Sid and Nancy, along as well. We just go for a dog walk and maybe see. We've got a sparrowhawk that keeps popping up around at the moment. So maybe try and find the sparrowhawk, or we try and find. Or we try and find the badger set. There's a really active badger set, and we'd sit and wait for the badgers to come out and just kind of enjoy being in one another's company, again showcasing, you know, how good human relationships can be and how well we can treat one another, as well as how, you know, great it is to interact with our environment. Also, you know, highlighting how important interacting with our environment is on our mental health too.
Yeah, and sort of interacting with the environment on that very local level, as well as thinking about kind of the species all over the world that you've learnt about at the Natural History Museum. Also the species on your doorstep, like the sparrowhawk, you know, some really impressive species we've got here in southern England, with the New Forest on the doorstep in your case. And yeah, so what about the song that you would play the alien? Because, you know, you're at home, you've got your sound system set up, you know, it's a good place to play the alien some music. Which would be the main song that you would play the alien in this particular place?
Well, this is a song that I grew up listening to. This is you know, Chris Packham, my stepdad, he's a you know, a very big punk rocker. So he's got, you know, hundreds and hundreds of records of all these punk things, and most of them, you know, I can't listen to very well, but there is a few that stick out for me that are very special to me. It's one that he used to play all the time when I was growing up, but it's also one that I think it just showcases human relationships really well, and that is from The Cure, and it's called Friday I'm in Love, which was produced in 1992.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, okay. And what about the alien film night in your home? You've got your sofas there, you've got your TV nice and cozy in your family unit. What would be the film that you would show the alien at home?
Well, I am a very, very big fan of sci-fi. Huge fan. I will watch alien films, zombie films, everything all the time. You know, the more kind of I don't know, apocalyptic, the better, in that sense. But I felt like if I was going to be sat next to an alien, I wouldn't want to insult the alien by our depiction of what aliens are and how aggressive they are, because if he's come around with me, I've taken him to 3 places, he must be, you know, a nice person. So, you know,
he hasn't vaporized you or anything, so you must be fine.
Exactly. So I feel like I would show him a lovely interpretation of what aliens, you know, or what we thought aliens were anyway. And that is, of course, E.T. It is a classic film, and it's just heartwarming. You know, the young boy who, you know, befriends an alien and hides him in his closet. I think that's just something very, very sweet about that. And it's a metaphor, of course, as well, because, you know, it's a case of kind of not understanding something doesn't necessarily mean we don't have to love it. And just because it's something we're not familiar with, whether that be people of different cultures, whether it be different food, whether it be, you know, different countries, different things like that, we should be kind of embracing it and learning from one another and helping one another more and being kinder. That's the message I take from E.T. anyway.
Yeah, I think the alien is heartened to know that in that film E.T. there are humans that can accept its alien presence without being afraid. I mean, in the film, if I remember correctly, some of the humans, on the adult side of humanity, were kind of afraid of the alien, but it was the kids, wasn't it? It was Elliot, I think, who was befriending the alien. And the alien is just telling me telepathically that it has certain abilities in common with the alien in the E.T. film as well. So they both can do telekinesis, so moving objects from a distance and that kind of thing. So I don't think he knows that particular alien he's telling me, but he's certainly got a few things in common with the alien from E.T.
Oh, maybe he can look him up in the address book when he gets back home.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think there's the phone book issue, isn't there, in the E.T. film? Something about phoning home. So
home, exactly. E.T.'s on there. He's on the books.
Yeah, great. Okay, so so we've gone through the 3 places and the songs and films that you'd show the alien in each place. Is there any kind of final, kind of overarching thought or final message that you'd like to leave the alien to leave with as it flies back to its own planet?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things, but I think the most important thing for me is kind of be open and considerate about your environment. When you go outside, don't just spend time out there, but really connect with it. Open your ears, open your nose, open your senses, open everything, and just really, listen and hear and take in everything, because that is how we learn to love something. And once we learn to love it, we then learn to protect it. So yeah, that would be what I'd say, is just to kind of be more open, and allow our environment to have an impact on us.
Great. Okay, yeah, so be more open and sort of stay open-minded as well, yeah.
Mm.
Great. So new to 2020 as well with the podcast, it's the option of alien actions, and I understand that you've been working on designing an alien head, and you're going to at some point post a picture of you with the alien head that you design, and say a positive environmental action that you've done in that place. So have you got in mind a particular positive environmental action that you'll be doing as part of Alien Actions?
I do. So one thing that I really kind of encourage people to do is to put holes in their fences. I know that sounds really silly, but it's really, really important. In the UK, much of our land space is made up of gardens, which is a really valuable resource in many ways for lots of different animals. But there's many animals, things like hedgehogs, that are unable to distribute effectively because they are enclosed in fences. So what I'm asking people to do is go into their garden, be a bit rebellious, put a little hole in your fence, to allow a better distribution for species like the hedgehog, which is in significant decline, to allow it to have more freedom of movement, to go to the resources that it needs, find the mates that it needs in order to safeguard its future. So it's really important to put holes in your fences. It's really small. It doesn't have to be a big hole. It's just a little something that people can do to encourage that.
Yeah, so you're not encouraging fence vandalism here. You're encouraging a very small controlled hole at the bottom of the fence to allow the hedgehogs and other species to move between gardens. Because, as you say, if there aren't holes in fences, then you're effectively creating an island and an isolated patch. And so, although you might have some wildlife in your particular patch, if it can't connect with the wildlife in the other patches, then it's effectively going to die out within that patch. So by connecting all the gardens together, you're effectively creating one connected massive area of habitat for our wildlife.
Exactly that. We need bigger ecosystems, not small microcosms. We need to expand our gardens, let them be connected, and that will just go such a long way in securing, the future of things like the hedgehog.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing that on social media. And Megan McCubbin, thank you very much for sharing with us your 3 alien places.
Thank you very much for having me.